six or a beer down here. And not that shitty stuff. I'm talking Russian Imperial Stouts.
Ooh. No more weed gummies for me. Okay guys, so here I am at work today at the cemetery. I tried to do a spoiler review for Salem's Lot on my break, but it wasn't recording and I want to kill somebody. So I'm going to film it incrementally. I'm not going to do a whole play-by-play of the movie, but I'm just going to give you the specific details of specific things I want to talk about, okay? First and foremost, the most important thing is that they did away with the whole Bloody Pirates thing. For those of you who are familiar with the book, or frankly, either of the two previous adaptations, the Bloody Pirates was Ben's group of friends back when he was a kid, all right? And in order to become a Bloody Pirate, they dared him to go into the Marston house, which had a sordid history, to retrieve something, and then he finds the body of Hubie Marston hanging there, all right? And it traumatizes him, okay? And he feels like a calling to go back to Salem's Lot. And there's this whole sort of thing about like let's put it this way. The vampires are essentially an afterthought, okay? What this book, what the original story was trying to say is that, like, evil places attract evil things. And the Marston house is really, like, the central... It itself is evil, and it's a home for evil things. If it wasn't the vampires, it probably would have been something else, okay? Which is a cool idea, and it's what kind of separates Salem's Lot from other vampire stories, all right? So taking that out, I mean, again, it takes away from the originality. You can still watch this film, like, if you know nothing about the story, and enjoy it as its own, like, as its own vampire film. It is mostly well made, I do have to say. And it is above average on the creep factor, okay? But when you take away the Bloody Pirates, you're also taking away the primary motivation of the main character. I mean, Ben goes back to Salem's Lot. He wants to rent the Marston house from Larry Crockett. He wants to, like, write a book about it because it had such a effect on him. And it seems almost kind of, like, fated that, you know, that he should show up there when Straker and Barlow do, you know, like good and evil coming together to battle one another. Stephen King does that a lot, you know. But taking away this motivation from his character, it's like he's just visiting the town, his hometown, cuz. And it's almost like if they were to remake Psycho, okay? And Norman Bates still killed people with a kitchen knife. He still dressed up as a woman, and he still did the voice every time he killed them, okay? But they went into no explanation about his mother or anything about that, you know? If you were not familiar with the story, you might watch it and be like, oh, wow, that guy's just fucking crazy. You know, or, I mean, you know, some people these days might even be like, oh, wow, how progressive. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, you take that away and you take away so much depth and explanation. The fact that he dresses up as a woman, well, it's just because he's a wacko. You know, it takes away all the meaning behind everything. So, and if they had included the Bloody Pirate scene, it would have taken, I mean, they could have probably done it in like a minute and a half. You know, it really wouldn't have expanded the runtime all that much. They do show Barlow way too quickly. It's just a flash of his face, you know, which is really too bad that they did that right in the beginning and they let you know that it's a vampire movie right in the beginning. I wish they hadn't done that, but whatever. I mean, there are some very creepy sequences with Barlow. The entire abduction of Danny Glick scene is very well done. First of all, Straker, what a creep, man. What a creep. He tries to pick up Danny and Ralphie before anything, and they're like, nah, man, we're good. We're going to cut through the woods. They actually cut through the woods to avoid him, okay? And you see this awesome shot of the silhouettes of the two boys walking through the woods, and then in another shot you see the shadow of Straker walking right behind Ralphie, and it's like, Oh man, I mean, it was genuinely creepy. And then when he abducts him, he's in a bag, and he's like, Ralphie can see out of this little hole, and he sees Straker, and he can see flashes of something else coming towards him, and he basically knows he's gonna die. Again, very well directed, very creepy, you know, but I just wish that they hadn't like hammered you over the head with the fact that it's a vampire movie right in the beginning like that. Just a personal preference. But again, as its own standalone vampire movie, it doesn't really ruin anything. There's one scene that is just straight up dumb, like even in its own right as its own standalone vampire movie, and that is that the doctor lady injects herself with, like, she gets bitten, she injects herself with, like, I think a rabies vaccine or something like that, but because she does it quick enough, it heals her, and I'm like, that is stupid. That is some Fog remake shit. That is like the scene in the Fog remake when the guy hides in the refrigerator and survives, and he's like, the cold, they can't get to the cold. It's like, really? These ghosts that come up from the icy freaking briny depths of the ocean, they can't survive a little refrigerator? Come on, man. There's also Barlow. He's not in the movie a lot, but they try to do kind of a combination where they made him look bat-like like the original film, but also gave him the ability to speak, but they didn't utilize said ability very much. And the scene where he confronts Father Callahan, it's so much better in the book because like, first of all, Barlow lets him live. Okay, in this movie, he just kills Father Callahan and that's it. And he says like one line about like, oh, sad to see a priest lose his faith or whatever. Barlow took on, he looked like a human for most of the book, and he took on this monstrous form that Father Callahan recognized from his childhood as like a personal boogeyman he used to have, okay? And Barlow basically like emasculates him, basically says like, yeah, you've failed your God, you've failed your parish, you can go now, you know, like, and Father Callahan leaves in shame and doesn't get a chance to redeem himself until the 7th Dark Tower book. But, you know, again, it's a scene that just seemed very much glossed over. Frankly, it could have been a lot better, but if you hadn't read the book, it probably wouldn't bother you as much. They also kind of do a number on Ben's character, to be honest, because he doesn't really do much in this movie, you know? In the book, and even the original 2 miniseries that they did, he was a man of action, you know? When he realized what needed to be done, he did what needed to be done, you know? The doctor lady makes the cross when they're, you know, facing off against Marjorie Glick. When they find Susan in the trunk, which, by the way, all the vampires have been hiding out at the drive-in, which I think is a really cool idea. I mean, I like that they changed it up a little bit, and the whole aesthetic of the thing was pretty cool that they were in the trunk. But, you know, they get there, they see Susan in the trunk, and the doctor lady's like, do you want me to handle it? And Ben's like, yeah. And he like walks away. It's like, you pussy. Sorry. Like, you little wimp, you know, like, come on. You're gonna let somebody else do all your work for you. It's like, you love Susan, you owe it to her to set her soul free, for God's sake. So that was really dumb. Ben doesn't really do much at all in the movie, to be honest with you. I mean, thank God that Mark Petrie was kind of a badass, and that's one thing that I do have to say about the movie, particularly involving the introduction to Mark Petrie. He was very much like the book, you know. He was beating up the bully, twisting his arm around, telling him to say uncle. But Mark was the badass of this movie. Ben was a wet rag the entire time. I mean, he does technically stake Barlow at the end of the movie, but like, that's only because Barlow's distracted going after Mark Petrie, you know. Barlow's distracted. Ben comes up behind Barlow and stabs him like sort of in the back of the head with the stake and pulls it out, and you can see a hole in Barlow's throat with Ben Mears' face behind him, which, hey, badass shot, I'm not complaining, okay? But then Barlow just basically goes like and like falls over, and then Ben just stakes him, and that's it. And it's like, I couldn't help but feel kind of like, that's it? Like, really? That's all you got? Ugh. You know, I mean, I don't know. It was just something else. I mean, overall, what I would say about this movie is, I'm complaining about it a lot because I am a fan of the book, okay? If I didn't know half the shit that I knew, I would look at this movie and be like, it's a pretty fun vampire movie. Not a perfect vampire movie. There is that one dumb scene with the rabies thing. But overall, pretty solid. Above average scary. The visuals and the whole atmosphere of the thing are very creepy. So if you are a fan of the original miniseries and the book, I would recommend unlearn what you have learned. Pretend you don't know anything. Pretend you're going in completely blind. Pretend it's not Salem's Lot, for God's sake, and just take it as its own vampire movie. It's, you know, relatively well paced. It does have some pretty good creep factor in it. You know, Mike Ryerson coming back, you can only see his like silhouette at the bar. That was a really creepy scene. There's a lot of good stuff in this movie, you know, but as a fan of the book, there's some shit that they took out that it's like, this could have been so much better. And considering the fact that Ben Mears was in the library like researching the Marsden house, I almost kind of feel like maybe they did film the Bloody Pirates story, but then just for time or whatever, they took it out. Why on earth you would take that out over God knows what else this movie was larded with is beyond me, but okay. So, not a great adaptation of the novel, in my opinion, but in its own right, a decent enough vampire movie. So, take that however you will. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. If you like this, please feel free to leave a like or subscribe, and I will hopefully see you soon. That's all she wrote.